Building influence is something anyone can learn. It's an investment you can make in yourself, and it can hold the keys to achieving your dreams and having the life and impact you want to have. I'm Laura Cox Kaplan. I've learned a lot over 3 decades about building and sustaining influence and how using it and using it effectively can make a big difference in your life and career. Here on She Said podcast, we're digging into the different dimensions that help us build and sustain influence. If you thought being an influencer was just for social media, think again. Whether you're starting a business, raising money for a cause, negotiating a promotion, running your household, or trying to connect with those who don't share your views, understanding and using the different dimensions of influence will increase your chances of success, whatever your goals may be. Listening to She Said podcast is a smart, efficient investment you can make in you. I'm really glad you're here, and I'm excited we're on this journey together. Hey, friend, welcome to the podcast. Ever think back to the advice that you got when you first graduated, either from high school or college or maybe both? What are some of those nuggets of wisdom that have really withstood the test of time for you? And what's made some of the advice stand out over other advice? In reflecting on this question, I thought it was worth sharing why the particular construct of influence and the levers that I talk about and that I teach about matter, and what I'll share with you today may surprise you a bit. One of the great resources that I use in a new course that I've just taught this semester at American University is the age-old and best-known sage of all things influence, the late, great Dale Carnegie. His book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, has sold more than 30 million copies since its original publication way back in 1936. Carnegie wrote the book to help folks who were struggling through the economic collapse of the Great Depression. If you had a job back then, you certainly wanted to keep it, and if you didn't, you wanted to do whatever was possible to get one and to be the kind of employee and person that others wanted to work with and hire. Now, arguably, Carnegie's advice is even more on point today with a job market that relies even more on freelance opportunities and much less on employer-employee loyalty. We typically change jobs numerous times and in ways that folks didn't in the 1930s and 1940s. But Carnegie was also quoted as saying that the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, was as much for himself as it was for others because he used the advice as a guide to help him stay on track. I love this because it reminded me a little bit of what I do here at She Said podcast and She Said Media. Each week, as I'm thinking about topics that I think will be helpful to you in your life and career and that will resonate with you, I'm also thinking about the topics and strategies that I find and have found helpful and useful. And often I'm sharing tips and tools that I use over and over and over again. I need the tools because I don't always do it all correctly or manage my relationships flawlessly. Honestly, friend, that's an understatement. I do try to do my best, and my influence toolkit, of course, helps me stay on track. But even more importantly, perhaps, my influence toolkit is what helps me pull it all back together when I do drop my basket. Isn't that a great saying? It's such a great visual for dropping, all the things that you have on your plate and having them scatter all over the place. Now, today's chat with you was actually inspired by one of those recent moments when I did, in fact, drop my basket. While the circumstances of this are frankly immaterial and rather too personal to share, what's important is that I wasn't living up to my own standards and the levers of influence that I talk to you about every week. And things fell apart. And I lost it all over the place and all over the people who I love. Friend, it happens. I wish it didn't, but sometimes it does. And for a host of reasons. Some of those are within our control and some of those are not. But when something like that happens and we let ourselves and those around us down, the most important piece of advice that I can share is this: cut yourself some slack. That does not mean let yourself off the hook, but instead do what you need to do to make it right with the people who you let down. And that includes yourself. Because chances are you were already letting yourself down before you dropped your basket. I was. I got so overwhelmed with so many things and so many obligations that I simply couldn't see straight. I wasn't being disciplined about my own self-management and the self-investments that I always talk about as being important on this very podcast. And it all came crashing down as things typically do. One of the hardest parts for me is that I know better. It's what I do. But that doesn't mean we don't all make mistakes, even when we know how not to. It can and it does still happen, period. The other piece of this relates to connection and your network and making sure that you have a trusted circle around you who can remind you of the need to forgive yourself when this happens. Because in the moment, it can often be very hard to see yourself clearly. Now, my close posse, and I am so grateful for these women. I adore them, and they are my sisters by other mothers. They always can and do help me find my way back and help me remember that forgiving myself when I screw up is the first step. I would be lost without these women and without that connection and that network. We often talk about the power of connection and network on this podcast. It's important as it relates to you at a very personal level, as I've just described, but also for getting good, candid feedback on all sorts of topics and resources that you can draw from. As I continue to reflect on all of this, I'm working to make sure that I learn from my recent basket dropping episode and that I really think about what I could have done differently before I reached the point of dropping my basket, and then what I'll try to do differently going forward. One of the things that I am most proud of was that I was candid with my family about how badly I felt about not living up to my own standards, and telling my kids that it can be hard to forgive yourself when this happens, but that you have to. It's the only way to move forward and to do better. Now, while I'm not so proud of my actions, I'm proud that I can use this as a teaching moment, not just for me. I believe that our most authentic example of showing our kids what it looks like when we mess up and when we have to fix something is even more powerful than if we always did things correctly. No one does. So when we don't show the reality, how can our kids ever really learn from us? It's another great example of how influence works with those who are closest to us. I hope that by talking candidly with my own kids about mishaps and how to fix them, that it will give them a better understanding of how to navigate such challenges for themselves, and hopefully to ask for help when they need it. Now, friend, one important caveat to all of this. Nothing I talk about here should ever take the place of professional help when you need it. That, along with the tools that I talk about, can be very complementary and incredibly helpful. And there is no shame ever in asking for help when you need it. I do have lots of other great advice for new graduates, but remembering to cut yourself some slack and using the tools that I talk about each week are how we can create and live our most influential lives, and in ways that helps to make us happier and ultimately more fulfilled. If you are graduating or you're launching a graduate into the world, congratulations to you. I hope you found this week's episode and my personal advice and little story helpful, and I would love to hear from you. Send me an email at info@shesaid.media, or you can contact me via the link in the show notes for this episode. It's episode 246. Until next week, friend, you take care and I'll talk to you again soon. She Said podcast is produced weekly by She Said Media.